most to blame for last night's loss?
Scott Linehan and Jason Garrett. Very, very simple to me. We could look at Dak Prescott. We could look at the 12-12 record over the last season and a half since his rookie campaign. We could look at the 48 QBR. We could look at all of that. And certainly there were throws that he could have made that he didn't, but he was under constant pressure throughout the night. The only offensive lineman that really showed up and looked effective in my estimation was Zach Martin, who's an absolute stud. Outside of that, Dallas's offensive line isn't what it used to be. That's fine. I got that. And maybe that's the justification that Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan will utilize to justify how Ezekiel Elliott only touched the ball 6 times in the second half for the second straight game, which is just stupid. But the bottom line is this comes down to Scott Linehan and Jason Garrett. Very predictable play calling, relatively pedestrian and conservative, had no faith in Dak Prescott whatsoever, and that's what this really comes down to. I saw Allen Hurns put a move on Malcolm Butler. I don't know if Malcolm Butler's recovered yet from that burn, that 23-yard touchdown. And I ain't going to even talk about how Amari Cooper was giving it to him prior to, Allen Hurns taking advantage of him. That was the only blemish that I saw for the Tennessee Titans in terms of Malcolm Butler's performance. He's got to step it up. But the bottom line is when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, very, very predictable offensive play calling. And when you look at it from that perspective and you understand the changes that were made, Max, Ryan, Molly, you look at Dez Bryant being gone. You know that Ezekiel Elliott missed 6 games last year. He's coming back this year. You know Dak Prescott is your quarterback. You know Ezekiel Elliott is your running back. You know about Cole Beasley. You know about Terrence Williams. You know the pieces that you have in place. I don't want to hear any excuses from them. They knew exactly what they were going to be working with coming into this season. And they have looked porous. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're Jerry Jones, I don't want to hear or see another offensive line coach being replaced by Colombo and all of this other stuff. Get rid of your coordinator. Get rid of your head coach. There's 2 head coaches in the NFL, in my opinion, that needs to be gone. And we know who the hell I'm going to say. It's going to be Marvin Lewis if he don't win a playoff game. And it should have been Jason Garrett years ago. It's that simple to me.
When you have a top-down disaster, where do you start placing the blame? At the top. And that's Jerry Jones. Look, I'm going to get to Jason Garrett in a second. Let me start by saying I recognize this pattern from Jerry Jones. I recognize it as a New York sports fan with the Knicks in the 80s and early 90s, and also especially with the Yankees in the 80s. These were teams that were not good enough to win a championship quite. But in the Knicks case, they realized, listen, if we make it to the second round of the playoffs, we're making money. So they never really wanted to tear it down for a year or two to build it back up into something that could get over the top. And with the Yankees, George Steinbrenner, a big ego owner like Jerry Jones, was constantly doubling down on winning now, even though they weren't quite good enough to win now. Jerry Jones doubled down to win now. He looked at this roster, which wasn't ready to be the best team in football, and thought, I'm going to spend a first for Amari Cooper. That's the kind of move you make if you think you're ready to win right now. Is Dak Prescott a franchise quarterback? That's a question. It's a question. He has regressed enough now to where I wouldn't say he's garbage, he's not a starter. I think he's the starting quarterback. That's a little different to me than a franchise quarterback. But when you are committed to a player who you don't know is a legit franchise quarterback, that's a problem, and that's not the time to be doubling down. Look, I could talk about Jason Garrett. Ezekiel Elliott, 6 carries in the second half, no touches in the fourth quarter to Ezekiel. Like, that's play calling, that's coaching. I get that. Jason Garrett is just there because Jerry Jones' ego is too big. Run Bill Parcells out of town, right? His ego is too, forget about Jimmy Johnson, to really have a great coach, because then the coach gets the credit and then his ego gets hurt. So he needs a coach that's not going to get credit, which means it's not going to be a great coach. So I'm not even going to talk about that right now with Jason Garrett. That's where I and everyone always goes with Jerry Jones. I'm talking about the fact that he's looking at Dak Prescott. There are questions about him and says, we're so committed to him, we're going to trade a first for Amari Cooper. Is that the way a rational and sane franchise operates? How many more wins are in this Dallas Cowboys schedule this season? 3, maybe?
Listen, it gets tough coming up because they've got the Eagles, Falcons, at home for the Redskins, Saints, and Philly.
That is not good for the Dallas Cowboys. It's not good. And by the way, they don't have their first-round pick. This is a dysfunctional franchise run by an egomaniac, and that is the problem. Even last night, the problem was Jerry Jones.
Ryan?
Listen, I totally agree that the problem is Jerry Jones, and it's some of the things that Max didn't even mention, and understand where he goes with the coaching decisions. To be a coach of the Dallas Cowboys, when you have a owner like Jerry Jones, you have to be an alpha male. You have to be an A-type personality. The problem is those don't vibe with Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones can't make you his puppet. Jerry Jones can't control you. The arena won't be filled with people that just love Jerry Jones. The reporters won't run up to Jerry Jones after the game and want to talk to the GM more than they want to talk to the head coach. And those are all things that Jerry Jones doesn't want. But when you look at there's enough blame to go around. Scott Linehan, obviously not calling plays, not getting the ball into Ezekiel Elliott's hands, not finding ways to get Dak outside the pocket, Dak holding on to the ball too long when you know you don't have the protection up front. It's not just about Jerry Jones making a decision that he wasn't going to make a coaching change. It's about the decision he makes on each player, and then each player not doing their job defensively, not being able to stop Dion Lewis, making a decision to draft Van Der Esch because you know you need him because Sean Lee is getting hurt, but not moving on from Sean Lee so Van Der Esch can get the reps. There's so much blame to go around here, but in the end, when the players are on the field, when it's third down and you give up 11 of those for 14, you are not making plays. Linehan's not calling defensive plays. He's not playing free safety. This whole thing needs to be blown up in Dallas. It is time to move on from Jason Garrett. It may be time to move on from Dak Prescott. And the one move that really didn't hurt him last night was the Amari Cooper move, because I think he will be rejuvenated there, and he showed he had the goods. But this team is going nowhere fast. It starts at the top, but there's a lot of blame that can go through all the way to the bottom.